Well, hello there. I'm Mama Jane's husband, and this is,
Mama Jane.
and we're currently on a cruise around Greenland. And we thought we would tell you about what we've learnt. So if that interests you, then watch on. Well, we are having an epic adventure on the NCL Star to Iceland and Greenland. Now, because not many people go to Greenland, even on a cruise, and even less people seem to vlog about it, we thought we would make a priority of making the video about Greenland. Because we've got about 20 or 30 videos in production, and I haven't quite got them all finished. So here we are on the NCL Star recording about Greenland. So, Mama Jane.
Well, we're just so delighted actually that we've got into Greenland or onto Greenland. I'm not quite sure what the correct term is, but so many cruise ships recently have not been able to. They've gone to Iceland, but they've not been able to get into Greenland. So we were delighted that we could get into Greenland. So here we are. It's a very unusual, interesting place. And if you're used to cruising, you may not be used to things like Greenland. So hopefully these handy hints, top tips, will make it easier for you.
The first thing to say is the scenery is stunning. It is amazing. It's nothing like anything else on the planet. And the reason for that is a lot of the rocks here are 4 billion years old. It's some of the oldest rocks that you can access in the world and see without having to go underground. So it's a phenomenal place. And it's also full of wildlife. We've seen whales. We've seen a musk ox. We've seen, what was it, a seal or two. It's just been a phenomenal experience. That said, as Mama Jane has already said, they're not reliable ports getting in. The weather here is a bit extreme.
It can change in a split second, like it did at lunchtime, didn't it? We just 1 minute it was clear, sunny, and we just looked back, and it was fog. Yes.
So many cruise ships have had their Greenland ports cancelled this year and haven't managed to get in at all. We've been really lucky. We got into a place called Nanatalik and Kartok, which I think is where they got the idea of Klingon from. And also we've just sailed through Prince Christian Sund fjord, and that's been a really memorable experience as well.
It takes quite a few hours it's to do that.
It's taken, was it 7 hours?
Yeah.
So a phenomenal experience, but it needs a bit of effort and a bit of risk to do it.
So nearly all the ports, I think all the ports in Greenland are tender ports, which if you're used to cruising, you'll know means your ship can't actually get up to the dock and anchor. They have to drop anchor further out at sea, and then they usually use the lifeboats, certainly for Greenland they do, to get into port. Now, tenders are can be tricky, and in fact if you have got poor mobility you will not manage to get on a tender, because it can be quite a gap between the dock and the tender, so you've got to bear that in mind.
Yes, and some companies are better at tendering than others. And we've had mixed experience with NCL, both on other cruises and this cruise, and many factors affect the way you get aboard. get on shore. But at the first port, Nanatalik, for instance, some people didn't get to the port on shore until the afternoon, 1-2 p.m. Because that's how long it took to get round to them.
And because, as the captain said, it kept us very well informed. And he said, he apologised for the delay, which didn't actually affect us, but there was only one space for a tender. Now, yesterday there were 2 spaces, so it was obviously half the time. So it's very variable.
Now, the other thing to say then is that the ports, they're small. About 1,000 people lived in Nanatalik, and a few more thousand lived in Kartok, and they're not built for cruise visitors. There's no cruise port.
No.
There's no shops there that are trying to sell you diamonds and all that nonsense. So it's rough and ready.
It's
lovely, but rough and ready.
They're very much trying to establish tourism as an industry, and so you might get one little table with somebody stood behind it selling things. That's probably what you'll get. Yesterday at Kartok, which I think means white. Anyway, there was actually a little souvenir shop. I didn't go in it, but there was. But yes, so don't go expecting it to be like a Caribbean or anywhere else type port, because it's not.
So really think quite seriously about pre-booking tours. All right. And also, we normally try to do a port on our own, or if we can't do that, we try to book tours independently. But there's a lot to be said in places like Greenland in booking the cruise ship tours, particularly when it's a tender port, because then you're guaranteed a slot on the tender to get ashore for the tour you're doing.
Yeah, and if you're used to arriving at a port and there's people stood there with placards, this tour, that tour, forget it.
No.
It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. No.
There were many people who you could hear arriving ashore and asking, was there any availability? And there just wasn't any availability. There's very limited availability of tours then when people got ashore. Because in our case, NCL had booked up, block booked most of the tours that were available. So try to budget for the cruise ship shore excursions,
because they're not cheap.
No, they're not cheap.
There's no two ways about it. They are not cheap. And that's why most people, or many people, do their own thing. But in this instance, don't even. No, I wouldn't. Be disappointed.
You'll enhance your experience a great deal. You've come a long way. So try to budget for what could be described as rip-off prices by the cruise company.
Now, having said all that, how do we then get on to the, shall I say, that the Greenland, what's it called? Health and safety. Oh, no. Not like European. That's a fact. For example, we were going on a boat to see a fjord and ice thingy, what have you. And when we got to the said boat, it seated 7 people, which is fine. It was a lovely boat and a lovely, lovely driver, whatever they're called, pilot. Very nice. The first thing I noticed was there were no proper steps to get up onto the boat. It was 3 pallets, not fastened together. You just pushed them how you wanted to be able to get your feet on them. And then you had to get your leg over into the boat. Trust me, it was not easy. So if you're fit enough to get onto a tender, that does not mean you'll be fit enough to get onto a boat trip. It was quite tricky. Having said that, once on the said boat, the seat or the back of the boat where you sit was wet through because, well, it would be because it'd been raining, but it hadn't been wiped, so no,
Only needed a towel, didn't
yeah,
you?
yeah, just a scraggy old towel or something.
Yeah. I sacrificed my hanky.
And so things like that, they haven't quite got the tourist thing.
Customer service.
Customer service. There was no talk about life belts. Indeed, were there any life jackets? I don't know. Normally on a boat trip, you get a little 2-minute thing about should this happen? These are where the life jackets are. No, so I don't know whether there were any. I couldn't see any. I couldn't see a cupboard marked with any. I've no idea. So things like that.
And then yesterday at the boat trip I went on in Car Talk, because actually we read between the lines and thought that with Mama Jane's poorly knee at the moment, she wouldn't manage this trip. And we were right, because the boarding arrangements were even more tricky. And I barely got on the boat myself and barely got off the boat myself, because you had to do it by the stairs. You had to just hop onto these stairs and hop across.
And the boat that he went on yesterday wasn't
tied up.
It wasn't tied up to the mooring thing. No, at least ours was tied up, so it didn't move too much. No. This one was not.
And on the way back, the rib boat that was having passengers get off before we were due to get off drifted away as somebody was getting off, and they fell into the water, which is highly dangerous, because if the boat then comes back across, you get your head crushed, or battered. So
they didn't.
But it didn't happen, and the lady seemed perfectly okay. Of course, but it was a husband or partner who pulled her out. No staff came rushing to help. It was a partner or a kind person who pulled her out of the water. So let's just say
it can be an adventure.
Be aware. All right, be aware of what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
Okay. Mozzies, Mama Jane, this is your department. Mozzies.
Well, we'd seen videos about the mozzies,
mosquitoes,
and so we did buy some mosquito net face coverings. Now, as it happened, we didn't need them, but I would advise you get them on Amazon. They cost very little, but we did use some face cream, because bearing in mind it is so cold, as we'll come to in a bit, there's very little skin showing, so it really is just your face. It's just your face, so but there can be a problem, but for us, no, there was the odd one.
Top advice: take some mosquito head nets with you. Take some mosquito cream, which we put on our face. But we also had some wristbands, which we put on our bags.
Now, whether they helped, I've no idea.
I don't know. But I was on one of my trips. Some of the guests did have a problem with mosquitoes, and I didn't. So there you go. I think it worked really well.
But then again, they don't bite everybody.
But they do usually bite me, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. I'm obviously very tasty. Now then, next, something that you won't often have to talk about when you're visiting a port, but that's toilet management. Again, Mama Jane.
Very discreet. Oh, so that's my, this is mine then. Now look, girls and boys of a certain age, you have to make sure there is a lavatory nearby. There isn't. No, there isn't. And you are told this when you're, but unfortunately not until after you've booked the excursion. So you are told that there is no toilet in the port. Normally there's a toilet there. No, there is not. There's the odd ones around.
So before you go ashore, you need a toilet. You need to go, but also you need to ask the cruise company where the toilets are in the port you're going, because we did find out there were 2 toilets in a cafe, for instance.
And one in the church.
One in the church. There was a pub we found, So there are some toilets, but they're hidden away.
Yeah.
But your shore excursion staff should know where they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So you need to have a toilet management plan and establish before you go ashore where you're going for your wee or worse.
Are you allowed to say we?
I just did. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we thought that was worth mentioning.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So now then, Greenland is part of Denmark. It has home rule, so they can decide on things that affect themselves, but they have no governance on foreign policy, for instance. So Denmark deal with all that, and Denmark sort out their healthcare, social services, that sort of thing. Give them a grant for it, and then they decide how they're spending it. Now, when it comes to mobile phone signals, although you'd think that Greenland is part of Denmark, so part of Europe, so if you've got a roaming contract for Europe, then you should be all right in Greenland. Well, you're not. Because in terms of mobile phone coverage, it seems to be part of North America. So your EU or European roaming contract will not work in Greenland. So top tip is you need to plan ahead again for that. And eSIM, that's the word, isn't it? Can you use an eSIM? Then something like Gig Sky or Arlo will work for you probably quite well. Because for various reasons, we weren't able to try that. But that would be my top tip. Okay, so
going back to no skin much showing,
yes.
Clothing. Now, Greenland it's cold. It's been about 6 degrees.
Sometimes as low as 3.
Yeah. And damp and wet and drizzly
Windy.
and windy, can be very windy. Yeah. So you need to put on lots of layers. Don't just think, oh, well, I've got a thick sweater and my vest. No. You need thermal type long sleeved underwear, long johns, leggings. We call them long johns in England, but you may not be in England watching this. So thermal underwear.
Layers
up. And
don't go out in flip-flops. We saw we saw a teenager in flip-flops.
No.
Not good.
No. So please make sure, if you've got proper walking boots, that's a bonus. But if not, just good sturdy shoes, because of course the pavements, they're not pavements. Exactly, they're not pavements.
I haven't seen any pavements.
No, they're not pavements. They're just like rough, cobbly, not even cobbly, gravelly.
Actually, that is not true. I did find some pavements.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, there are some pavements. Yeah.
I didn't, but there you go.
Yeah. So layer up. As you can see, you really do need to think about a lot of things before going ashore at Greenland and visiting Greenland, which is why we're making this video, because we want to help you avoid some of the mistakes we made.
So then, what are you going to see in the ports? That's the next question. Well, there's usually a church, and apparently 90-odd% of Greenland people are Christian. Protestant, in fact. Lutheran, I think.
Lutheran.
So there is that. So there's always a church nearby. May not be very big, but it may have a toilet, as the one yesterday did. And so there is that. And there's always a museum. Now, museums, they can be amazing places, or they can be odd places. And the one that we went in where was the first place we went? Nanatalik. Was an open air museum. And indeed it was. It was lovely, all these little buildings, and you went in, and one was clothing, Inuit. We do not say Eskimo. Inuit people. They were their traditional clothing, and that was lovely. Then in another room there was a blubber press, which was also quite interesting. I
found that very poignant, because it had been used
Yeah.
during whaling times.
Yeah.
And I thought it just was pulled up my old heartstrings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was what was the other? And there was a kayak
Yeah.
room, little
room.
house.
Yeah.
That was lovely. But then the strange thing was, then we went in and there was a room with sewing machines. And you might think, oh, old-fashioned Inuit sewing machine. No. They were like I used to have, a Singer sewing machine. Very ordinary sewing machines and typewriters. And typewriter that I used to have, and one that even older that I learned to type on. And you think, that's not really Greenland history,
and radio
is it?
setups.
And radio setup.
Mobile phone collection.
Yeah.
Going back to the earliest mobile phones.
And whilst interesting, it was interesting. Think, oh crikey, I used to have one like that, or use something like that. But it wasn't
unique to Greenland.
It wasn't unique to Greenland.
So the museums were a mix of things that were unique to Greenland, but other things that weren't unique to Greenland.
Yeah.
What it did bring out was the importance of the canoe kayak to the culture. And even today you could walk around and you'll see kayaks hanging off the side of houses. That's where they stored them. So I found that really quite interesting. And you did get a sense of the history and cultural sort of where they were as a people from the museums, and how really reliant they'd be. Their history depended a lot on the Vikings, how became the Norsemen, Denmark, Sweden, and that whole setup really. And World War II. That's another thing that we got a sense of how important World War II was in the history of Greenland. You can find out about that when you come yourself. Do you think that's it?
I think that's it. And I would definitely recommend, if you like something different, if you're looking for a beach holiday with sunshine and that kind of thing, do not even consider it. But if you're looking for something just a bit foreign, well, no, not a bit foreign, ever so foreign, it is worth it. If you're also looking to take a chance that you might not even get here, then you've got to remember that it's nothing is guaranteed. Yeah.
And there are beaches though. Both Nanotalik and Kartok had small beaches. Yeah. Whether you want to sunbathe on them,
I don't think
you might
so.
want to frostbite bathe on them. And I doubt whether you want to go swimming. But what would have been nice is being able to hire a kayak and go for a paddle on the lake that was in Kartok. That would have been fabulous. Top tourist tip for the tourist industry in Kartok, if you ask me. So anyway, we're going to do some more videos specifically about the ports, but we thought we'd do one just about the challenges of visiting Greenland. So from now, it's a goodbye from
me,
and it's a goodbye from
him.
So goodbye.